Hello, everyone. I'm going to talk through sort of where we are in terms of the community and organization around the trails and where we need to go. And I'm Blake. I'm chair of Standing Boy. I'm the, up till now, the sort of negotiating with land managers, to some extent, raising money, dealing with trail builders and contractors, making design decisions. A lot of that is not necessarily that susceptible to group work. You can sort of think of I don't know what the analogy is. Maybe it's like a house where a different architect designed each room, or you can end up with problems. You sort of need somebody to just make decisions. You needed all the information in someone's head, one person's head, and we just didn't have regular in-person meetings, and that's largely my fault. I've got, uh, you know, 9 and 11-year-old kids in a traditional, 9 to 5, 5 day a week job. So the schedule is just not very flexible, but that has reduced a sense of ownership and accountability. It meant that just we haven't developed the sort of robust organization that we need. There are also plenty of limitations that have to do with me. I mean, my real job is I'm a subject matter expert. I'm not a manager of people. I'm, it's a lot of this keyboard advocacy kind of stuff I can squeeze in really early in the morning before work, at lunch, odd times. I'm, and then my personal inclination is not to delegate, or personal flaw. And so that's a little bit of explanatory, but also something that I've got to monitor going forward, because I'll print this out, and every time we're making decisions and before meetings, kind of reflect back on what we're trying to achieve. I'm We're at an inflection point right now. The trails, the vast majority have been built. There are no big holes in terms of, do we have certain types of trails? Do we have connectivity, et cetera? The remaining trails are laid out. We sort of got a plan for what kind of trails they need to be. And a lot of things were done in the existing trails because of how the remaining segments or trails are going to be constructed. Um, the trailhead, we're getting very close as far as the basic needs to support the trail system. The management model, the agreements in place. Hopefully, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to launch the new website and the parking fee. And so, moving forward, we've got to move away from things being so centralized in me, and we've got to increase utilization. We've got to get more volunteer engagement, and we've got to get a more robust organization. And that really starts with me being better about engaging volunteers, focusing on organization building, and doing those sorts of things. My goal, or where I'd like to go, is chair of the advisory board, and we'll create a separate, when we have it in the bylaws, that we can create a separate advisory board. And I see my role is sort of knowledge. I mean, there's no way that I'm going to ever get everything in my head and other people's heads. There's just a knowledge of that property, a knowledge of the master plan and design decisions and the way things are supposed to fit together. I'm looking at specific things and trails with the builders and just the amount of time spent with them. The promises and representations we made to donors and supporters and land managers, and then just mistakes, what hasn't worked, etc. Um, this is going to lessen over time, but I've still got key relationships with land managers and other sort of supporters and parties. And then sort of making sure we continue to adhere to our mission, that we have some core philosophies and strategies and the way we've agreed to do things, and that if we're not being consistent with those, we need to intentionally and thoughtfully revisit them, or we need to be consistent. Um, and what I mainly like to do is some fun in the woods work on the property with my dog, stuff that doesn't feel like my real job. I'm because I'm tired. I mean, it's been thousands of hours over the past. I mean, I think there was an initial meeting in 2015. Um, and I I need to slow down. And we have to do this in order to move things forward. I've made on how to start doing this. I've made a finite list of tasks that are the few sort of have to have things that need to be done, and either directly or through chief responsibility, one way or another, I'm going to make sure those happen. And then I'm going to stop doing things directly. I'm going to focus, hopefully, 99% of my energy on organization building and delegating and empowering other people to do things. And if they get done, they get done. And if they don't, they don't. I want to, I know this is probably going to frustrate some people, but before we start doing this, I want us to talk through some guiding principles, philosophies, strategies, whatever you want to call them, and agree on those. Because if we get a whole bunch of people doing a whole bunch of different things and we don't have a plan and we're not referring back to that plan and we don't have some core things, then we're going to end up with a mess and stuff that doesn't make sense and people sort of going in opposite directions. We need to create committees, and I've got some ideas on that, but I want that to be a group decision. And I think we start small and let them grow and expand in number and complexity, et cetera, organically, rather than trying to start off with 5 committees when we don't have enough committed volunteers to fill 5 committees. And then we've got to start meeting in person, and it's got to be regular. And we just need to set up whether it's, it'll depend a little bit on the committees as to whether it's on a weekend or whether it's at lunch or whether it's, the first Monday night of every month or whatever it is. But we've got to have those in-person meetings to sort of create accountability, because it's very easy for me and one other person to talk about things, but then they don't really have accountability to the whole group. And I don't have accountability to follow up and sort of let them run with it, and things tend to just fall by the wayside. Here's the list. I printed this. I think of these are committees. This is the stuff that either happens or it doesn't. And I printed it because nothing else is going above the line, absent some natural disaster. Sort of this above the line stuff is the stuff that I feel like I've got to make happen one way or another. And then everything else is, if it happens, I'm going to be involved indirectly through organization building and trying to learn how to be a manager. I'll tick through some of these. These aren't, the admin stuff's not really worth discussing that much. I've redrafted the bylaws to support these committees. We need to adopt a capitalization policy. So those will tidy up some organizational things. We've got to elect a new executive committee, move some people to the advisory board, and then sort of figure out a couple of initial committees, appoint some chairs, put some people on there, and come up with some sort of specific and attainable near-term tasks. I'd like us to come up with we've got a little bit of this, but a business plan and a budget, and see if we can fundraise for the first 2 years of part-time executive director, with the idea that by the end of the second year, through parking revenue and sponsorships, et cetera, we'll have enough revenue to support them. We've got some decals that I need to finish up that are just little stickers to sort of recognize volunteers. We're looking at a volunteer app that would allow us to track individual volunteer hours so that we can recognize those people and so that people can earn a parking pass. We got a couple of things to deal with on insurance and liability. Um, Nothing urgent. I mean, we're fine, but some things we need to deal with there. Um, the parking fee, I've got to nail down a tow truck company. There's some legal requirements to get some signage, and then we've got to get those signs made. They're designed. We just need the final URL for the new website so we can create a QR. The website's coming along. We need photography for it, and we're not going to have the photography when it launches. But once it launches, we'll be able to make a list of, hey, we need this photo and that photo, so that rather than getting with some people and just going out to take some pictures, we'll kind of have a plan and a tick list and be able to look at a map and think a little bit and plan before we go out there. For the patrons and supporters, and you can go back and look at maybe the last or next to last video, but we'll have a parking pass will be $100 a year, and a supporter will be $250, and a patron will be $500. And we need to do some things for those people in addition to multiple parking passes. One will be a texting app, and we've made some headway on this so that whenever there's a change in trail status, you get a text. If we think we're going to be able to open a segment or a trail that's been closed to get reworked, if you volunteered at a certain level or get at a certain level, you may get a text be like, hey, we're going to pull the tape at 1:00 Sunday afternoon, and you'll know that, and other people won't, because that information about hey, we think we're going to be able to open the trails back up Sunday at 1 or Saturday at 2 or whatever it is. That information is valuable, and we can give that information to people that support us beyond just paying the parking fee. And then Zapier is like an integration thing that'll just help us with all the opening and closing things that go on. I've got to update the large donors and continue to sort of nurture those relationships. We've got to get the supporter and patron. We've got to build out that program, and we've got some special like window decals for them and a sponsorship program. I need to check in with Columbus Waterworks on getting a pipe. They want to run a pipe to the back of Green Island down that road, and they're going to do some things for us. And we're looking at some solar panels on this pole barn we're building and a weather station, because another thing we could give to supporters and patrons is if we had a weather station that we could get hooked up to internet so that hey, it rained Saturday, we closed the trails. Well, did it rain an inch? Did it rain 2 inches? And that information is valuable, because then that's going to give you an idea of like, well, is there a chance they're open Sunday or not? And that's something that we could somehow, we haven't explored this a lot, but make that feed available to people that give and volunteer at a certain level. We got a few things. The jumps in gravity, they're the newest trails, which always require the most attention, and they also just require the most attention. But there are a number of things we need to look at there to just sort of tidy those up, get them sustainable, and then come back through like lower lickety split. Some of those dirt little doubles and stuff is really worn down. It's hard to get in there. The soil's not the best. I mean, we can go in there with hand tools, but what we did with those large flat rocks at the very beginning, I think is awesome. And it's very low maintenance. And so the idea would be to get in there with a machine and do that the whole way down, and let that be sort of, non-concave, sort of flatter, more enduro-y takeoffs that is very low maintenance. And then the maintenance improvement, I've played around with TrailFab, our local guys. They did the bottom of Cyclone Gallop without basically no input from me. It turned out great. And so that's going really well. Trying to keep project lists, trying to differentiate between what's volunteer, what are we going to pay people to do, Um, I want us to be more consistent on how we clear drains and do some other basic things. Um, but that's an item there that just helps us be less centralized. We don't want it needs to be the case that we're empowering people to go out there and do some basic maintenance without it being an official work day. Because I mean, I did a lot of reading when we first started this. I mean, really effective nonprofits are decentralized. We've got to get more decentralized. Um, we got the hiking trailhead. We're working on permission. Um, and then we need some Old River Road signage. We're going to do some cool stamped metal signage for both the biking overflow, which is what we have currently, and the hiking trailhead that'll be on the field road. We've got some signs for those, and then we need to get the hiking kiosk up once we have that parking lot built. We still need to work on the getting all the location markers up for our emergency maintenance map. We kind of started, but then it's no fun to be in the woods in July and August, and now it's cooling down enough where we need to get back on that and finish it off. I need to coordinate with EMS. Like we've got some information that we've gotten from IMBA and other people about sort of uh, stretcher setups and side by side how they incorporate the stretcher and such. We've got a pole barn kit on the way. We're going to put a pole barn where the dirt pile is by the container so that we can keep our equipment under there. We've got to do something to recognize the founding donors of the trailhead, and then we still need to do the viewing towers. Those are the things that I, one way or another, am going to make sure happen, have ownership of. I hate to say that because I feel like I'm telling people that they can not help and it's going to get done anyway. But that's what has to be done. Things like, a good example is the trailhead. If we want to paint our containers so they're a little bit prettier, more benches, a changing stall, bike racks. If we want to do, we improved the hub. We made a little hub at the top of Straight Shot where Cyclone and other things start, and move the sign over there, which is great. We need to get some benches and bike racks in there. And if we want to do that some other areas, that would be nice. All those things don't have to happen. We have to have porta potties. We have to have a kiosk. We have to have signage to charge the parking fee. But a lot of this stuff, it's not like I'm going to disappear, but the way I'm going to contribute to this is through putting my energy into organization and committees and managing and empowering other people. Hope that makes sense. And hope this is good food for thought and then discussion at the next couple of meetings we'll have. And then we will try to, next month, maybe two, settle on committees, settle on tasks and projects and priorities, and start trying to accomplish things more through committees. Thanks for taking the time to watch. I hope to see everybody at some of these upcoming meetings.